Imagine Crusoe alone on an island. Crusoe employs things from the land and their attributes as a means to achieve an end. This end is chosen by Crusoe because he believes the closer realization of his end will remove a felt uneasiness. This is human action. All action aims at a state of action no longer being employed, which is known as the plain state of rest. This is because either all felt uneasiness has been removed, or it is no longer expected any further action will remove such. Where action will end up by its time of rest is uncertain. Change, the kind of change that affects an action's trajectory towards its new state of rest, disturbs the state of rest where it would have ended up. But what if we imagine a construct where this change was gone? We find out what this lost state of rest would have been undisturbed, the final state of rest. This state is impossible to reach since change in regard to rest always shifts an action's trajectory towards a new state of rest in the real world. Hey, quick announcement on my shitty mic. I have an Odyssey account. You can follow me on odyssey.com/@theschizoidman:9. So yeah, check me out over there. Crusoe has to choose what means to employ and what ends to aim for. There is an exchange over one potential action Crusoe can perform and a different potential action. How Crusoe will decide depends on what he believes will bring about the most amount of removal of his felt uneasiness. In other words, it depends on Crusoe's values. Crusoe orders his values from the highest to the lowest, and he will give up what he values less before what he values more. We call this the scale of values. Now, let's introduce Friday to this island. Further, let's assume there is a realization that a voluntary transaction of goods can be employed, such as Crusoe offering his wood for Friday's fish. Let's assume Crusoe values Friday's fish more than his wood, and Friday values Crusoe's wood more than his fish. With the realization of a potential transaction, Crusoe and Friday will actualize the transaction. They will leave this transaction with further felt ease than before because Crusoe and Friday have employed their respective actions. The nature of voluntary transactions will be fundamental to a correct theory of prices. Now, let's leave the island and refer to our real world, where there is money, which is a common medium of exchange, and therefore prices. The process of production organizes the arrangement of capital goods, or goods made for producing other goods, to produce either more capital goods or consumer goods, which are goods made for consumption. The bought price of a good is derived from the same nature of any other transaction, the scale of values. Demonstrated through one's own action, there is a certain point where a buyer no longer values the price to be paid for a good, and the same goes for the seller, that point being the price where it is no longer valuable to sell at. If we remove the conditions disturbing an action state of rest within a transaction involving money, we reach what is called the final price. All prices on the market tend towards this final price, never reaching it due to new data entering the market disturbing and redirecting an action state of rest. What determines the formation of prices does not come into play all at once. There is a time lapse between these factors. If this condition too is eliminated from the final state of rest and its final price, what we get is the emergence of the evenly rotating economy. The evenly rotating economy, or the ERE, is an imaginary construct of an economy where uncertainty about the future economic conditions that man has is removed. In other words, the future is known. As Ludwig von Mises put it, the evenly rotating economy is a fictitious system in which the market prices of all goods and services coincide with their final price. While in the real world, where both the quality and quantity of goods are constantly changing, and value scales are also constantly changing, The ERE allows us to imagine where none of these changes intervene. All economic factors remain constant for both production of goods and services, and of their prices. All economic activity is repetitive. This is because man would perfectly adjust his action to account for the all-known future. All rates of interest would be the same in the ERE. Otherwise, production would shift towards lower interest rates, and this would disturb the final state of rest. It is important to remember that the ERE and the final state of rest are two separate constructs. While the final state of rest is the absence of action in its finality, the ERE is the path and the logical conclusion of all actions in an economy as it aims towards this final state of rest. Rothbard said it best, what are the consequences from this construct? Quote, if values, technology, and resources remain constant, we have two successive state of affairs. A. The period of transition to an unchanging, evenly rotating economy. And B. The unchanging round of the evenly rotating economy itself. This latter stage is the state of final equilibrium. It is to be distinguished from the market equilibrium prices that are set each day by the interaction of supply and demand. The final equilibrium state is one which the economy is always tending to approach. If our data, values, technology, and resources remain constant, the economy would move toward the final equilibrium position and remain there. The imaginary construct of the ERE is vital to understand a correct theory of prices, interest rates, and further the Austrian business cycle theory. A lower interest rate allows for greater savings and the opportunity to adopt more time-consuming processes of production. The ERE shows where this tendency aims towards. When an entrepreneur adjusts production profitably, it is his accurate appraisal, or in other words, his accurate prediction of future prices and adjusting action for monetary profit, that shifts production towards greater savings. Profit brings about the tendency towards the ERE, but there are no savings, holding cash, or profit and loss in the ERE. Everyone knows how much money they will need and when they will need it. Therefore, everyone will loan what they don't need in a way that the loans will fall due on the date when it is needed again. Assuming the money has non-monetary purposes, everyone will restrict their cash holding in such a way where all the money will only serve non-monetary purposes once we reach the later stage to the finalization of the ERE. Since by definition this money serves no monetary purposes, it is no longer money. This is indeed a contradiction. The ERE should never be treated as a possibility. It is merely a conceptual tool for understanding, as an insight to the inherent nature of speculation on the uncertain future in all actions. In the real world, entrepreneurs adjust their actions to guide production more profitably precisely because we live in a world of uncertainty. Entrepreneurs, and more broadly all actors in an economy, are all trying to anticipate future conditions for their plan of action. Remember where prices are derived from? They are derived from man's scale of values. It is the further satisfaction of ends that drives men to trade in the market economy. Man has to correctly anticipate his future conditions to best satisfy his ends. Entrepreneurs, looking to make a monetary profit, are mutually furthering this satisfaction for both parties involved with this voluntary transaction. In the certain world of the ERE, all men in the market economy adjust his actions perfectly. There is no more room left for profits. The entrepreneur is no longer needed. This is where profit comes from. It comes from man correctly anticipating future conditions, furthering the progression towards that unachievable, evenly rotating world. The ERE is a mental tool for comprehending profit and loss. It is not a tool for comprehending the pricing process. Entrepreneurs are not guided by final prices, but rather anticipated future prices. It is the failure to recognize this fact and to integrate it into economic theory that the mathematical economists commit a grave blunder. They forget that when they deal with this final equilibrium, they are no longer dealing with human action, the root of all economic theory. I quote Mises again from Human Action. Action is change, and change is in the temporal sequence. But in the evenly rotating economy, change and succession of events are eliminated. Action is to make choices and to cope with an uncertain future. But in the evenly rotating economy, there is no choosing and the future is not uncertain, as it does not differ from the present known state. Such a rigid system is not peopled with living men making choices and liable to error. It is a world of soulless, unthinking automatons. It is not a human society. It is an anthill, where we can see the movement and the tendency of an economy. We have gained insight to a more correct theory of economics. By examining an action's final state of rest, we tap into an imaginary potential, but never possible world with a very real purpose. And I have to end this video with Murray Rothbard. From Man's State and Economy, I quote, "The complexity of the market system is such that we cannot analyze factor prices and incomes in a world of continual change unless we first analyze their determination in an evenly rotating world, where there is no change, and when given conditions are allowed to work themselves out to the full." Well, you made it to the end of the video. Thank you for watching. That's it, fuck off. But in a good way, like, be gentle with yourself.